Hello, welcome back to mini lecture number 4 with Jess Vriesma for Computer Science 163 at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. We'll be talking today about one-dimensional arrays, and the relevant reading is section 6.1 and 6.3 in our textbook. 6.2 involves a couple simple algorithms that we'll be talking about soon. What is an array? An array is a special type of variable that can hold multiple objects of the same type. In some ways, you can think of it as a whole bunch of variables in one, but with some restrictions. If we want to declare just a single integer, a normal regular integer, we can declare it like this: int my value equals 3. So we're declaring it and initializing it. If we do that, then there's a variable called my value, that's its name. It has a type of integer, and so here's an integer sized box, I guess, with a value 3 inside of it. So that's one variable. Now if we wanted to have 6 integers in an array, we could declare it like this: int my array 6 equals 1, 4, 9, 2, 4, 7. Here, we're declaring an int array called myArray, so the variable name is myArray. It's just one variable, but now it has 6 boxes, or 6 spaces to hold 6 different values inside of it. So this is what an array kind of looks like, whereas before we have a variable and we can just hold one thing in the variable, an array is a special kind of variable in which we can hold multiple values in each element of that array. So you can kind of think of it like a train. Each one of these cars can hold a different kind of thing. In one car you might, all of these hold coal, but you could have it where a train car could have sand or gravel. And so you'd have to look inside of each one of these train cars to see what the contents are. So let's examine what this looks like. Here we have a declaration of my array with 6 values in it, 6 integers. Let's see what this looks like. Here, this is the variable name in purple. Here, we're declaring it to be a type integer array. So that means that each one of these values in the array are going to each be an integer. When we declare it, we're going to give the size of the array, or the number of elements in the array, in the square brackets when we declare the array. And that always has to be done when you're when you're declaring an array. So here we're saying my array is going to have 6 values, and they're all going to be integer. So the size is 6 elements. So here in our picture, we've drawn 6 boxes. Notice that we've right underneath this red curly brace, we have my array 0, my array 1, my array 2, and so on. Those are going to be the ways that we can access the different elements of this array. Now, so far we haven't given it values. What we can do then is to give it values here, shown in blue. So when we initialize an array, we can choose to not give them values yet, or we can choose to give them values, just like we do with a variable. So here, when we do that, we can kind of draw a picture of what it looks like by taking those values between the curly braces and then putting them in these boxes down below. Later on, we could change the values of any one of these elements, or all of them, and then those numbers in those boxes would change, just like they would change for a normal variable. Putting this all together with all of the different colors and graphics, here's what it looks like. So let's see what's up with those orange numbers in between the square braces next to my array. An index is the number that you use in between square brackets to access a certain element. Now there are 2 lines here that we'll look at. The first line, double values bracket 5 bracket equals, and then curly braces with a bunch of values. There, the 5 is not corresponding to an index saying, this element or that element. It's corresponding to the number of elements, or the size of the array. In the second line, once you've already declared the array, and whenever you declare array, you have to tell it its size, but later on, when we've already declared an array, and you're either trying to get values from the array, or assign values to an element, or assign a value to an element in the array, then whatever number we have between those square brackets is called an index. Now indices in C++ and in C and in Java are all start counting from 0. So if you have values bracket 0, you're looking at the first element in the array. If you have values 1, you're looking at the second element of the array. And you can see that in the next slide as well. So if you want to access the elements of the arrays for assigning array elements, you could do it as shown in this slide. So if you have an array of size 6, you can set those 6 values like this. Notice we might say when we're talking about it, I'm assigning values, the first 6 values. So my array 0 is actually the first element, my array 1 is actually the second element, my array 2 is the third, my array 3 is the fourth, my array 4 is the fifth, my array 5 is the sixth. So there's a little bit of trouble here because it always seems like we're off by 1. The reasons for this are a little bit beyond the scope of our course right now. We can talk about it later when we talk about pointers, but for now, we're just going to have to learn to be comfortable with that. Now, if we want to get the value of an array, we would do the same thing. So here, this is some code to calculate the sum of all the values of this array of length 6. So we initialize a value called sum to be 0, and then we're going to add to the sum all of the values in the array and then output the result. Now this is the long version. We can also take this and do a loop over it. So here, if I've got that same array of length 6, I can take those 6 lines where I'm adding the array to the sum in each line, and I can put that in a loop because I'm doing that 6 times. So int I equals 0, I is less than 6, I plus plus. That's going to go and say I equals 0, sum plus equals my array 0, then sum plus equals my array 1, sum plus equals my array 2, dot dot dot, sum plus equals my array 5, and then I is going to be 6. The for loop is going to check is 6 less than 6, and it's going to, or 6 less than 6, and it's going to say no, so it'll exit the loop. So it'll only loop over 0 through 5. Now if we wanted to generalize this to an array of a different size, we could we could declare the array using a constant integer. So here I'm saying constant size equals 6. We could have also said 100. So then I use that constant size, that constant variable, when I declare the size of the array. Now I can't just declare the array to be any size. It has to be a constant, like a literal constant, like number 247, or it has to be a compile time constant, in other words, a variable declared with the constant keyword. Anyway, so I've declared it, then I need to initialize the value somehow. I'll skip over that. And then basically it's the same as it was on the last slide, except in the for loop now, I'm saying from I equals 0, then I less than size rather than I less than 6, because I know the size of the array is size. So this is a more general way of looping over an array if you have the size of the array. So here's a table that just kind of summarizes some of the syntax for how to declare an array. And I encourage you to pause the video and just read over this yourself. But I'm going to go on. Here are some tips. Number 1, don't use array elements or any variable before giving them values. Just like with regular variables, array values will have ones and zeros in the computer's memory under the hood just from whatever happens to be there in memory. And so even if you haven't explicitly given a value, you can still reference it and get a value. So make sure that you don't use them before you actually give them values. Second, if an array has n elements, where n is like say 20, don't try to access the last element by index n. So if an array is size 20, don't try to get index 20. That's legal C code, but it can be tricky. So let's see an example. So say we have an array of size 10, so an array of 10 floats. We initialize the values, and then we output array element 9, which is really the 10th element. Remember, we're starting our counting from 0. And then that'll work. That'll be the last element in the array. That'll be the 10th element. Then we try to output element with index 10. That's actually going to be the one after the 10th element. That'll be the 11th element. That's bigger than the size of the array. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause a bounds error to occur because you've left the bounds of the array. Your index is bigger than the largest index that you could have. Now this is a cause for concern because this is actually valid C++ code, and the compiler, therefore, probably won't catch it for you unless you tell it to give you a specific warning. If you do this, it can corrupt data or cause your program to stop working or quit unexpectedly and cause confusion and trouble. So just make sure that you try to avoid that. So some end of lesson review questions. How can I declare an array? How can I initialize an array? How can I set only the third element of the array using an index? How would I get the value of the last element of an array of size 5? What are the range of legal indices in an array of given size n? For a practice problem, I challenge you to 1. Declare an array of 20 integers. 2. Use a for loop to initialize the array to have the values equal to the indices divided by 2. So if you had, for index 0, you'd have the value of the first element, index 0, be 0 divided by 2. For the next one, it would be 1 divided by 2. For the next one, it would be 2 divided by 2, 3 divided by 2, 4 divided by 2, and so on. Then, once you've done that, using the for loop, use a for loop to print out all the values of the array. Also, I challenge you to explore using different bounds. But there you go. That's it. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.